So this is everybody who's signed up so far. So it's not like we have a bunch of people who've registered who haven't logged in yet. Do you want to give it a couple minutes or?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah, we've typically seen a few people come in between 6:30 and 6:35.
So is there a forum for a task force?
Great question.
It's probably a minion, right? Something like that.
It's because we don't have, do we have assigned members to the task force? I can't remember.
So we have had
We do.
people
We have a list
who
somewhere.
have sort of voluntarily self-identified as members.
Yeah. Do we know how many that is?
I actually think I have it somewhere in my email.
And the honest answer is, as long as you're not voting on anything, quorum is kind of shrugs.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to be voting on until.
So we had something we wanted to vote on, but we can always
Oh, that's right.
discuss it and postpone it.
If you're voting on something, I would say quorum is important. If you're not voting on anything, quorum is useful.
Yeah, we can roll that vote into the final vote in, I guess
Or
that'll
we
be.
can roll it into September.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a date picked in September already? I can't remember.
No.
Is it clear what dates are available at this time?
Should be clear. The website should be fully updated. You've got a few options, which is
Great.
usually not true in September. So that's
Okay, so we will look at after this meeting and we will give you our choices.
cool. Michelle's joining. Craig. Okay.
I actually see one possible open date, September 17th.
Yes. What about the 19th? Is the 19th taken already?
Small Business Committee.
Oh, I need to update my calendar.
Okay, September 17th works for me. Adam?
Oh, and then you guys need to turn in your minutes from the last meeting.
I have them. They're on my other computer.
Okay.
But yes, I have them.
Right, I'm putting you in
why don't
for
we
the
take
17th.
September 17th
Yeah.
for now, and Adam will check his calendar
Yeah,
after that.
I don't have anything then, so let's just.
Great, let's take it.
Yeah.
Okay. I put it on the calendar so nobody else will take it.
Awesome.
And then are you sharing your screen today or?
Adam will be sharing. Adam, do you want me? I now have it. Do you want me to share and you drive?
Yeah, I can share. That's fine.
Or you can share. Go for it.
Okay.
Okay. It says sharing is not turned on, but I guess.
Oh yeah, no, I was sharing my screen, so you have to wait until I was done with that. Here you go. Go ahead.
Let me go back.
All right. Well, it's 6:35. Intimate group. Why don't we get started? And if anybody else joins, they will join.
Okay, we'll join.
Okay, Adam, do you know how to get into screen mode?
Yeah,
Slide
is this not,
mode?
all right. Well, I don't know why it's doing that. Are you seeing the full screen or no?
I'm seeing both the screen and the next page.
There we go.
There you go.
If I close, okay. I have two screens here, so it's all right.
That's why you were saying that.
Yep. So you can see that?
There you go. That's perfect.
Okay. So everybody, the cast of thousands, welcome to the Manhattan Community Board 8, July 16, 2024 meeting of the Task Force for Residential Rezoning. I'm Adam Wald, and I'm joined by my co-chair, Elizabeth Ropes. So for tonight's agenda, we wanted to discuss 3 parts of blocks 1484, 1485, and 1487. And as part of the research that we were conducting for tonight's presentation, we came across an interesting tidbit having to do with block 1485 that we thought necessary to call out as a separate discussion item. So we'll get to that later in the meeting. As a refresher, what is this task force was put together to look at C8-4 and M1-4 zonings in the Upper East Side and see what residential rezonings would be appropriate for these zoning districts. As some of you are familiar already, 94th Street has been rezoned from M1-4 to C2-8, obviously with all sorts of conditions in connection with the ULURP action. We have previously discussed the blocks in the East 60s, and we are tonight going to discuss East Block 1484, 1485, and Block 1487. As a reminder, in the M1-4, it's 2.0 FAR for commercial and up to 6.5 for community facility. In the C8-4, it's 5.0 commercial FAR, 6.5 community facility FAR. Residential uses are not allowed in these zoning districts, but commercial offices, schools, life sciences, self-storage, manufacturing, warehouse, and other non-residential uses are permitted. And as a reminder, there are no height limits in the M1-4 and the C8-4 zoning districts. So we're going to give you just a quick overview of our guiding hypotheses, which is what we've put forth early in this process. And our hypothesis was that the FAR had to be equal or greater than 6.5. And the rationale was that it's at least equivalent to the current community facility FAR. The goal of this task force is to convert to residential, not to downzone. The FAR is another hypothesis is the FAR is to ensure all or almost all lots meet the MIH requirements. So we want to minimize the potential for large single-family homes or luxury-only developments. The goal of this task force is not only to have residential zoning, but to have MIH zoning to promote development of affordable housing. Other hypotheses would be the minimum FAR needed to ensure that all or almost all of the lots meet MIH requirements. Again, this ties into the previous hypothesis. So we want to more closely match typical mid-block conditions relative to avenue buildings and their heights and types. And the contextual zone we want to only approach is our only approach to create a height limit is to look at contextual zones. So tonight will be an interesting study into what and how we're going to map some contextual zones, because everything we're discussing tonight concerns side street zonings. And we want to encourage paired and mixed use zoning districts. We want to grandfather existing uses, and we want consistent with rezonings of other manufacturing districts throughout the city. So again, earlier in June, we spoke about block 1435 and the 60th and 61st rezonings on First and Second Avenue. Tonight, we're going to speak about the East 70s, parts of block 1484, 1485, and 1487. So this is an overview of what exists on block 1484. 1484 is bound by the FDR on the east, York on the west, East 73rd on the north, and East 72nd Street on the south. This is an interesting block because anything that is mapped in an M14, so this is the M14 portion. I'm sorry if that's not clear. This is the M14 portion. Anything in the M14, there's only one development site that's fully mapped in the M14. Every other parcel on this block, it also is split with high density R10 zoning. So this is 515 East 72nd Street, which is a 400-foot tall project. This is split zoned. This is a 9-story project for lot 14. Lot 35 is the only parcel that's fully mapped in the M14, and this is the HSS garage as we've detailed down here. And then the last parcel, I have to get the exact address, but this is a 500-foot tall residential building. We talk about it on the next page. It's 530 East 73rd Street. So this is the only parcel that's fully in the M14, and that's the focus of the block 1484 site. This is split zoned. This tall building is also split zoned, and then the other parcels, this is a split zoned as well. This is 515 East 72nd Street.
I think more to our particular point, all of those lots that Adam was just describing as split zoned, they are all fully developed. They are all already built to a 10 FAR or greater. And I believe, and most of them are also already residential.
That's correct. So this is what's existing there today on the block. And this is the 73rd Street side of 515 East 72nd. And you can see the tower in the background. So, we wanted to show this, right? So in block 8, 1484 context, some of the context that we wanted to show here is that of these parcels that we're looking at here, directly across the street, and we're going to get to this in detail later, directly across the street is the MSK rezoning. So this is all a 10 FA or essentially 12 FAR rezoning that was granted back in 2014, I believe. And then everything on the avenue is all R10. So these are towers. This is tower zoning. This is tower zoning, and these are towers that surround the M14 here and here.
Yeah, there's actually, just go back for 1 second. This piece here on the 73rd Street and 74th Street, this is also part of the study. So this section here, but there's a very small area here that is currently, the M14, and it is really surrounded by R10 equivalent already. And while the avenue side has not yet been developed mostly to towers, certainly this lot has, this lot adjacent has, these lots here on 72nd Street have. So these are really surrounded by very tall buildings already.
So our zoning proposal is to create a 10 FAR equivalent, an R10 equivalent for all lots that are in this portion of block 1484. Again, with the exception of the HSS lot, all are fully built to this density or are on zoning lots that are built to even greater than this density. And this was our proposal for this lot. One of the comments that we developed was that it's opposite of C19, which is the MSK rezoning, and abuts an R10, and it's on a block with a mid-block development of over 400 feet. So in terms of neighborhood context, we thought it was appropriate to apply the highest density to this portion of block 1484. So with that, are we gonna discuss each block, you think, individually, and then we should take comments or questions, and then for each block, one at a time. So if there are any
See
questions,
if there are any questions on this particular block before we go on. Okay, let's go on to the next block.
I'll take the silence as full acceptance. Fair?
Take the silence as silence.
So the next block that we're going to discuss is the portion of block 1485, which is really interesting. So lots 11, 14, 39, 40, 45, and 46 are all owned by HSS. And they were acquired over the last, well, at this point, it's now between 2011 and 2020. And most recently, lots 45 and 46 were acquired for $70 million. So it's interesting to see that HSS has put all of this together. So these are all buildings that support HSS. Lots 5, 7, 8, and 10 are all residential apartment houses. So this block abuts the MSK rezoning here, lot 115 and 15, and then it also abuts R10 zoning along the avenue. So this is what exists in the area that's mapped within the M14 currently. And here's some photos of the street. So these are blocks 5, 7, 8, and 10. Lots 5, 7, 8, and 10 along East 73rd Street. This is HSS property here. This is also HSS property on East 74th Street. And there are lots continuing on East 74th Street. This is all owned by HSS. So these two are the same building. We just wanted to show each of the buildings separately. So this is all HSS along East 74th Street. And some neighborhood context. So obviously we are familiar with the Koch Center for Cancer Care, the MSK development directly across these properties along East 74th Street. There's a 24-story, 416-foot tall building. And abutting it is a nice open piece of vacant land, which is lot 115. Now, you'll notice our note here, which says Future Development NYC EDC, not CUNY. I guess we can get into that shortly after just show the rest of the neighborhood context. And this is obviously the opposite 74th Street. This is the Con Ed facility, which extends several hundred feet, essentially from 100 feet off of York Avenue all the way to the river. So our zoning proposal for block 1485 was also for all lots to consider a high density rezoning to R10 equivalent. Again, our rationale is that it is opposite Con Ed, so it won't disrupt anyone living opposite Con Ed. And it abuts a C19, and it's opposite a 400-foot building, and it abuts the R10 zoning along York Avenue. So with that, let's see, Elizabeth, do we want to talk about lot 115, or we just want to, you think we want to address this at the moment?
Well, why don't we see if there are any questions here?
Yeah. I see Michelle's hand.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Adam, can I just address something? Your voice, your sound is going in and out. When it's at its loudest, it's terrific, but then it fades down to nothing and then comes back. If there's something you can do about it, I don't know.
I will maintain an elevated projected voice.
Okay, thank you. Now, excuse me, 74th Street, is this the Sloan Kettering Hunter site where Hunter was supposed to build? Now, our understanding is that Hunter is not going to be building.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay,
we can address, do you want to address that now, Elizabeth? We might as well.
Sure. So Hunter has basically handed over the site to the EDC. The EDC has been tasked with effectively selling the site. And given the goals of this task force, we wanted to discuss taking action as a committee, a task force, and hopefully as a larger community board to call upon the city to make this a residential site and to make it a residential site with inclusionary housing, with affordable housing.
exactly. That was my thinking, in that the city, when we're talking about workforce housing, affordable housing, whatever term you're using, one of the war cries is that the city has no land. They claim they have no land. Well, here's a piece of land.
Yep.
So can we call upon them to develop it? In other words, if they sell it to a developer, then it's in the hands of a private developer. And then we have to go to extra steps to encourage the developer to do what the community would like him to do. But if it remains in the hands of the city, why can't we call upon the city to develop it? And I don't know how you would handle this, but as I had said, I am really not going to vote for any changes to residential that doesn't have a height limit. So rather than going to R10, I would say R10A, which has a 210 height limit with a 20% bonus for affordable housing. That is even high in terms of what our other side streets have. But this particular street sees a 400-foot tower and whatever. So what are your thoughts? What are you thinking about this site?
So Michelle, if I can just follow up on some of the things that you said, and I really appreciate your thinking here. The first is that this is already zoned for a 10-12 FAR. It is already zoned residential. It's a C19, residential use is permitted here. It is already at a 10-12 FAR without a height limit. What I do think, I don't think the city is not doing development, but I do think we can call upon the EDC that they should only bid this out with restrictions, and that those restrictions be that it must be residential development, that it must include affordable housing. And I think those are very reasonable restrictions to call upon the city and the EDC. And you are absolutely right. This is publicly owned land, currently owned by the state, but close enough, that should absolutely be as much affordable as possible.
So let me just follow up, if I may. Two things. If it's owned by the state, couldn't that open it up for like a Mitchell-Lama type partnership? Or
just hold on one thing. It's CUNY, so it's city.
It's
Sorry?
by the dormitory authority.
Oh, but it's being transferred to the NYC EDC though, so it'll be under
You're
EDC.
fading out again, Adam.
It'll
Just
be
say
under
that again.
EDC.
I didn't hear you.
It will be under EDC, city.
Okay, so state will not have a role in this.
The final transfer has not happened. I don't see that it's been recorded that the transfer has happened, so I don't know for sure.
Okay, so since it's already zoned residential, why does that preclude? We are suggesting zoning. So even though this is zoned without a height limit, why does that preclude us recommending zoning with a height limit? I mean, we are recommending zoning in places where there's no residential. So why can't we recommend an R10A here?
It already has C19 residential zoning. And what's interesting is that when it was mapped, I believe it was mapped prior to the MIH. So it is not an MIH site, which is interesting. So I think what we can do is we can try to push for it to be an MIH equivalent project. So whoever ends up taking possession of the property, whether it's through a ground lease or an ultimate sale or a public-private partnership, that it be an MIH style development. And I think the city would push for that anyway, which is what they generally do with dispositions.
But that would just mandate inclusionary housing, but it would not
Right.
say anything about height, correct?
Correct, but it also abuts a 416-foot tall hospital.
I know, that's what I said, which for me is a rationale to do a 210, because ordinarily on a side street, I'd be asking, for 80 foot. So that's my rationale for going up to 210.
Right, so we abut the hospital here, and we
Yep.
abut, and this is Con Ed here.
Right,
And this is a 400-foot tall building here.
right.
So you want
And
to
this
create
is
a
a 500
200-foot
foot
tall building here.
here.
Or 500 foot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
down here.
I think we have to take exception with if there are a lot of 400, 500 foot buildings surrounding that would be a reason not to have an equally tall building, not a reason to also have an equally tall building.
Okay.
It
Noted.
has an envelope. It has a prescribed ZFA under the current zoning. So
Yeah.
of this 215,000.
So this is the same issue that we've been discussing consistently, is when is it appropriate for it to be a contextual zone and a height limit? When do we just let it be an R10? Let's put a pin in. We understand Michelle's position. I think we genuinely do and appreciate it. And let's go to Ed. I saw Ed Hartzog had his hand up.
Yes, thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Adam. One thing about tonight's topics, these blocks were the subject of a lot of controversy about 10 years ago. There was an organization that was created called Residents for Reasonable Development that had a lot of people in that particular group of buildings surrounding that, especially on the MSK sale, which is part of what this was. A lot of consternation about the lack of give back to the community, because this location, this exact location, was the largest, if I'm not mistaken, open lot on the entire Upper East Side. I think it was 66,000 square feet. It was enormous. And the reason I know that so intimately well, aside from living down the street from it, is that my son's nursery school abutted that very block. And when I go to get on the drive, I go down 73rd Street, which takes me right past that last remaining garage that you're talking about tonight, which, if there is any suggestion in any resolution going forward, I don't want to be a pill. I am for more affordable housing, but if that resolution involves knocking down one of the last remaining garages on the Upper East Side with all that's going on. I can't go along with losing that garage and that block, but I share Michelle's concern. And I would suggest that respectfully that this particular lot, given the lack of a better word, shenanigans, and I use that word cautiously, but I think appropriately, on what was going on here, the two-step, if you will, and that's usually reserved for bankruptcy court and the little thing they call the Texas two-step on that, but equally as pernicious was the two-step on this one, because those who remember and were on the board, I see Jane on partial on our call, she may remember this. This involved the swapping of CUNY's nursing school on 35th Street with this particular block. And the reason that CUNY and MSK was getting some very good breaks in the finance market because they were doing this with CUNY on this nursing school that was, we were assured quite robustly, if I will, to quote counsel, at the time, was going to be built. There was no way about it, no ifs, ands, or buts. That was going up. And now here we are with an empty lot and talk of MIH and that sort of thing. And given our last meeting at full board and discussions about building affordable housing, it's the open lots. That's the key for building, because it's the land cost is the big nut. And so I would respectfully suggest that not only the height limit, because I find the unlimited height limit sort of underhanded in terms of not by the chairs, but just the way it's turned out. It's a real estate world. But I would suggest that this is absolutely 100% affordable and be very tight on those AMIs, because this is the part of the district where people do not skew towards the top of our socioeconomic community district. And given all that went on and all the, lack of a better word, the war that went on this location, I think that for the residents and for to kind of serve as a reminder that having community board members on for a length of time is a good thing, because they're able to have an institutional knowledge that otherwise wouldn't be around with this kind of thing happening. And I don't mean to go on and on, but to the point of, you know, it's a little something, I don't know, it's hard for me to articulate, but something, I mean, I'm all for this building, but I guess what's giving me cause for such pause this evening is knowing the history of how some of these buildings came about on some of these lots, and now 10 years later, a different world in a certain way, and using it, as Michelle was saying, you know, I agree with her, to use that 416-foot MSK building to bootstrap a 500-foot building into that, to shoehorn a 500-foot building into that spot, or God knows what they might want to put in there, whoever EDC bids it out to in the private real estate world. I just could not support something like that. It would just be a continuation of the kind of real estate dominated transactions that I find going on in the city that give me pause. And again, not being anti-development, not being NIMBY, but just trying to be circumspect and thoughtful in terms of just the context of it. And my last comment for this space especially is one of the biggest concerns and one of the biggest Donnybrooks on our board was the fact that many of us fought vociferously for MSK to give anything back to our community relative to that area of the Esplanade, because it was so blighted by just what had been going on there. And I know we've been trying to create something there, but it just, it really, as you can tell, it bothers me because we're not getting any of that. And just, it's a missed opportunity, I guess, is what I'm saying in this long dissertation, is that this could be a very missed opportunity for 100% affordable housing. So, Elizabeth, if you're pinning the site for Michelle's comment on the 210, please put a pin in there for me on the on that, and I'd like to see some green space associated with this, because if it's being transferred back to EDC, I'm very troubled. And I wish I was more prepared with research, because I still have it in the files from when we went through with this. We had an entire task force devoted just to this, just to MSK CUNY. In fact, I was just cleaning up some files in the last couple of weeks, and that's about half a drawer's worth of material. So anyway, sorry to go on and on. I probably you won't hear from me again, but I'm here. But thank you, and that's just some thoughts as to those particular sites.
Ed, that's really helpful, and it's helpful to have the history. So the note that I have written as a real takeaway here is needs to be greater than 20% affordable. Does anyone else want to weigh in here? And I would like to just note that when we first started the conversation this evening, and mentioned, Adam and I mentioned at the very top of the call of the meeting, before we had many people on, that we had been hoping to have to put forward a resolution on this topic tonight, but we were concerned that we didn't have enough board members on the call to do that. We are now up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At least the last time I checked, and there may be more. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, we are at 6. Is that enough to potentially put forth a resolution on?
Yeah, you guys have
on
quorum
EDC
now.
to make this residential, and what we might want to put within that, and is there appetite for that?
I think, I personally think we should table a resolution on this, just so we can get more specifics about the timing, about the actual conveyance of the site, when it's happening, what EDC, when they take control, how they plan to either develop or bid it out, and just more understand what the envelope potential is, because I know they have the 215,000 feet, but it may be more potentially if it is an inclusionary or an MIH project. So, and also we only have 6 board members.
Jane, you're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Well, I just want to second what Adam was saying. I'm so curious about this. I'm sort of new to the table on this rezoning stuff. As all of you know, I voted against the upzoning on East 94th Street because it was in the mid block. I'm curious to know why CUNY, the nursing home, Hunter, backed out. And I do well remember the enormous time that we gave to the MSK proposal, and certainly remember that nobody felt that the MSK was giving anything back to the community. I know we wanted more open space on that side and never got it. So I'm sort of with Adam that we have to sort of hold off a little bit till we have more details. It's amazing that there is an open space here.
It has a foundation, by the way. They spent the money building the foundation. That was one of the contributions.
Well,
But
I have to admit that I'm kind of fascinated and actually really glad to hear all of this reaction on MSK, since we, as a board, seem to have just handed them a 600-foot tall building on 66th to 67th Street and York Avenue, which I find extremely distressing.
I could not agree with you more, Elizabeth. I voted against that proposal too.
And are allowing them to demolish 355 housing units, despite what they term them.
And now you've got a situation. Am I still unmuted? I don't know.
Yes, you are, Jane.
okay, where you've got along York Avenue, those tenements that are now all owned by HSS. In any case, I think we should postpone a resolution.
Okay. We just felt it was really important to flag this and make this, and get this into the conversation.
So, sorry, did we want to go back to the proposal for this block?
Yeah,
So again, our proposal for this block, given what abuts it and what's opposite in both directions and what is along York Avenue, we felt that an R10 equivalent would also be appropriate for this mid-block section, but that this could be an appropriate use of a contextual zone to make Michelle happy. So again, this is the block context where we are, what abuts it. Also what abuts it, opposite 74th Street. So does anyone have any questions or comments on this proposal? Michelle?
Yeah, just so that I understand. So you're still proposing the R10?
We are.
well, no, I thought, Adam, you just said that we acknowledge that that an R10A here could be.
Sorry, R10A, apologies.
Ah, okay,
Yes.
okay. And again, the border is York to the river, 73 to 74. Correct?
Well, again,
It
so
doesn't go all the way to the river because lots 115
Oh,
and
right,
15
right.
are already C19.
Right,
Right.
so it's half that block, halfway down the block.
right, so this is where my cursor is, if you can see.
Right,
That's MSK, that's already C19, and
Right.
this is already R10.
okay. So what's outlined in blue, we're proposing R10A.
Correct.
I could support that. Let me ask you one more question. When you look at that block, that block, not meaning the block, but the what's outlined in blue, and the parcels, you have 45, 46, etc. What's the likelihood of that all being combined?
Well, that's what I was addressing earlier, is that, so if you see what I have in gray in this chart, and gray is all owned by HSS. So that's everything along 74th Street, this entire frontage along 74th Street. And these two parcels are also owned by HSS.
Okay, then that would be all the more reason to have an R10A, in my opinion.
Right, they've acquired these parcels over the years from 2011 to 2020.
Okay.
And these are separate properties. These are residential properties.
Now, what makes us think that if there's a zoning, what is grandfathering? Where does that figure in here? In other words, they own property now. Let's say there's a zoning change, so that it changes. It's different than from what they originally purchased. And that change will now dictate what can be built there. Do we then see them coming to us for thousands of variances so that they can build something completely different anyway?
Well, they can continue to operate as they did prior to the rezoning. They can continue to use their buildings as they did before it was rezoned. As it relates to a future rezoning or future use, You know, we're not sure what they'd want to do, whether they would sell the site or whether they would build the site. But they would be able, they would
What
have to
can
build it.
they do under the law? What,
It depends, it depends what zoning it becomes.
So Adam, let's be very specific. If there's an R10A zone, if they chose to build a pure community facility use, if they chose to build a pure medical facility,
Right?
does that give them a 10 FAR?
Yes.
what is physically there now?
So it's a bunch,
Photo.
it's a bunch of smaller buildings.
What
These are
does
the
it house
current
their offices?
Yeah, these are the current improvements. You know, we had a meeting with them at one point, and I asked them about rezoning this parcel or developing this parcel, and they said it was not in their immediate plans. My counter to that is an intuitive one, which is that they purchased these two parcels here for $70 million. I don't think they purchased these two buildings just to support their existing operations. They purchased these buildings to create this frontage for a future development and to finish off their assemblage. Down the road, who knows when, 2, 5, 7, 10 years, I would assume that they are looking at some sort of development plan here. But these are the current improvements on the site. They're one story.
Pictures. Why don't we show them the pictures?
Oh, okay, yeah. So they're just to say they're 1 to 5 story commercial buildings. And
So what do they have, offices in there now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is some of the improvements. And this is the rest. This building, these buildings, and this building.
Okay. Well, as I said, I can support the R10A. I have no doubt that you're quite right, that they're going to put all this together and want to build something eventually.
Right.
Are you looking for a resolution on this spot?
Now our resolution is going to be at the end. It's going to be a master resolution.
Okay, so not tonight.
Not tonight.
Okay.
And I guess we'll go to the last block, which I don't know if we really need to spend too much time on this. But this is another individual parcel on block 1487 that has M14 zoning. You know, we didn't exclude it. We thought to just include it to include it. It is owned by Con Ed. It is opposite their main station, their main power plant here. And this is more of a supporting yard that has utility improvements, transformer equipment, and, you know, a few very small buildings. So this is what it looks like. I'm sure you're familiar. It's here. And again, it's abutted by 535 East 75th and 540 East 76th Street. This is a condo. This is across the street, the Con Ed building, which you're familiar with. Also across the street. And that's across 76th Street. This is 520 East 76th Street, which is built in the mid block. It's 14 stories and 140 feet. And curiously, we note that it's built in R8B zoning. So again, it's a Con Ed parcel. I can't imagine it's a candidate for immediate development, but we still felt it appropriate to opine on the lot itself. We were in favor of splitting the parcel between an R8A equivalent and an R10A equivalent. The 76th Street side would have a height limit of 145 feet. It would be R8A. And the 75th Street side would be R10A equivalent with a 235-foot height cap. And the reason for doing this is we're considering what's on this block and opposite. So John Jay Park is nearby. This is on the same block as PS 158. And the context is important with the adjacent and abutting properties. So again, I'll show you where it is on the map. So John Jay Park is across the street. And this is Con Ed here. This is abutting it, 520 East 76th Street. And PS 158 is, sorry, it's not on this block, it's on the,
It's right up here.
it's on this block.
It's up that way.
Yeah. So it's one block north. It's not on this block. So that's the approach we took for this parcel. Again, with the thinking that I can't imagine this is an immediate candidate for development. So if
Jane,
anyone
you
has
had
any
your
comments
hand
or
up first?
questions.
Jane had her hand up first. Jane has taken her hand down. Does that mean that
No, no, I didn't take my hand down. I just clicked the unmute button. I just wanted to say something about the assemblage by HSS, that you have to be naive to think that they aren't planning something huge for that site. And you know, these HSS, these hospitals hire these land use lawyers, they can change the zoning. But I would support Michelle on the R10A equivalent for all of these sites. Thank you.
Michelle?
Yeah, thanks. So a question, since this is right across from John Jay, do you have any concerns about shadow and light and all that?
Oh,
You're
Elizabeth, you got muted
Elizabeth, you're
somehow.
muted.
that is why we proposed R8A for the 76th Street side, so that it's consistent with the existing building that is already there opposite John Jay.
But you don't think the R10A would have, on the 75th
Fifth Street side.
Street side, would have any effect on the park for shadows and things?
I don't think it would be significant.
Right, you
'Cause again,
basically would
it's
be
only
building,
235 feet.
yeah, your 235 feet would be kept within this envelope here, which is essentially 120 feet, because the new setbacks with City of Yes are now 20 feet. So you're essentially potentially build 80 feet deep, and the maximum would be 235 feet.
So so let me just understand, if you're talking about what's within that blue outline, one side of it will be R10A and the other, I mean, are you expecting two buildings on that site?
It could be a single building that is higher on the 75th
one
Street
side than another?
side than on the
Ah.
76th Street side. It could be two separate buildings.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Ed?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, that is an issue. Shadows, my son and I used to go there quite frequently, especially late in the year. There are a lot of large buildings around John Jay, especially on that block, coming down with the, I think it's the French school is to the left, if you're looking at that as we are from, as the crow flies. That's the French school right there. And Terry Grace, and the community activist, she lives in that building to the right, which is a very high building. Some of the people on the board remember Terry. No, Terry.
In lot 25?
Yeah. And the Cherokee is around the corner on the other side there, and there's a building right there. There's a lot of tall buildings close by. So when you close that off with a building of whatever height it is, that will close it off. It'll be ostensibly John Jay will be surrounded by a U or a C, basically by building. So, yeah, I mean, obviously after the blood center, no, I mean, yeah, shadows on playgrounds is not an issue that'll stop anything in this neighborhood. So, but I will say that it will. That'll be really, oof, yeah, that's, yeah, it's,
Right, and the R8A is intentional to keep it to
yeah,
145 foot height cap.
yeah, but Jane's point is well taken, is that I've seen and just with the lot, even with HSS, the reason they've assembled those buildings there and those lots, bravo to whoever held out for the 70 mil, good for you. But yeah, that another monstrous development is coming, and whatever you rezone here, Jane is also right, and you, Adam, should know as well as I do that there are too many smart real estate attorneys in this town that can blow out any zoning lot or merger on the map. They're all way too good, and they'll come up with something. And we're contextualizing ourselves here. That's what make me a little squeamish here. Is that the way we're contextualizing this is a way that sort of something. I'll find a better way to articulate it, but I mean, again, I understand the push for the housing. I get it. I'm just not sanguine that we're going to be getting as much housing out of it as I would like, and or affordable, I should say. But anyway, just to the shadows, it'll cut off to what you're worried about, Michelle and Jane. It'll slice it off. It'll be dark and cold over there, especially it's cold in the afternoons over there with no shadows, especially later in the year. Anyway, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ed. Craig?
Hi, everyone. I was just going to point out that the southern portion of John Jay Park over there, that isn't exactly passive space. That's already used for recreational for athletics. So I think it's the court and the little track area. So I'm not particularly concerned. I don't necessarily think there are going to be many shadows there to start with, but I'm not necessarily as concerned about that as I would be perhaps in other parts of John Jay Park. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Where we were. So that was our proposal for this parcel.
Yep.
That takes us to the end of this evening's activities. Unless there was any last minute comments or questions.
If I could just summarize some of the key themes that we heard in terms of feedback, and then let's please open up for questions. One is just given the history of this area and prior activities, that the contextual and providing some height limits is important. A second is the need to retain garages, and that's something that we could how can we put that desire to retain parking in within this broader proposal. Third is that the empty lot, the former CUNY site, how do we make that well more than 20% affordable, and get more information about what's happening with the EDC and what timing might be, and sort of get enough information so that we can potentially get to a resolution at the next meeting. And that, I mean, those were the primary themes. R10A kind of across the board, except for right opposite John Jay Park, where R8A gives us more protection, a lower height limit right by the park. Welcome and invite anybody for thoughts, comments. I see we're joined by Todd Stein. Welcome.
Jane has her hand up.
Should I speak?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to tell you, Elizabeth, that was a wonderful summary. I'm going to have to sign off now, but I will come to the next meeting in September. I happen to live right on 71st Street and I drive every day right past the MSK building. So I take a great interest in what goes on there, which is why I came to tonight's meeting. But I wanted to thank you because you did a good job of summarizing, and thank you, Adam, as well. So I will see you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay, so at our next meeting,
Wait,
we
Craig
are,
has just raised his hand. Craig?
Oh, no, I was just gonna make a motion to adjourn, but if you want to summarize what's going to be
yeah,
coming
we
up.
just, at our next meeting, we're gonna discuss blocks 1569 and 1570. And we will also revisit block 1485, lot 115, which we'll call the MSK CUNY site. Sorry. You may present your motion, Craig.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Michelle is seconding. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your summer. We'll see you tomorrow night.